Do you think that humans are an experiment? Some sort of genetic experiment?
My belief is that absolutely. Absolutely.
Barney Hill afterwards very reluctantly admitted that sperm was basically extracted from him. And
it woke me up to the notion that, this body is just a soul housing mechanism, right?
John, you had your own alien experience.
Yeah.
You have like the 3-body problem, this great Chinese sci-fi trilogy.
Yeah.
And in that you have the dark forest analogy and this idea that it's actually adaptive often for aliens to hide themselves or to infiltrate and to do, sort of deceptive scheming and not to just like land on the White House lawn.
Right.
And especially if you're dealing with this like sort of, unevolved, like if humans are like not where we need to be, and you present yourself and you're seen as this kind of foreign invader or whatever, like that's not going to go well, right? So you'd rather just like incept them with ideas, kind of subtly manipulate them or whatever, but go about your business. And it's actually adaptive from a survivalistic standpoint to just not even show yourself, not reveal yourself.
Absolutely. Well, and you can totally invalidate, if you're a behavioral scientist, right? You can totally invalidate all of your experimental results, trash your own experiment by revealing yourself, right? And so we have this notion of informed consent. We were talking about this last night, about the maybe there's a galactic IRB, Institutional Review Board,
That's really fascinating. So it's almost like, yeah, you can't bias the experiment, so you can't show yourself. That's so interesting. Do you think that humans are an experiment? Some sort of genetic experiment?
My belief is that absolutely. Absolutely. From what occurred with me.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of the experiencer literature is strongly suggestive of that. And a lot of us, I don't want to speak for all experiencers, all abductees. Abductees are a subgroup of experiencers. There are plenty of people that have interactions, right, that are positive and kumbaya and good for you.
Yeah.
There are others of us that have been terrified, right, and feel like lab rats. However, in retrospect, I was young and combative, and angry.
Yeah.
I have a whole chapter about the angry young man where I talk about, breaking hockey sticks and baseball bats in my backyard because I was so upset because I was
felt
paralyzed and violated and raped, right? And all those aspects of it.
Yeah.
And so I can't deny that maybe that was a motivation to become a fighter.
Yeah.
And end up in the line of work that I ended up in hostage rescue, right?
It is this extremely common trope in abduction experiences where they say, gametes are collected often in some unceremonious ways. So, sperm and eggs, and it's often sexual in nature, and genetic material or tissue is sometimes collected. And so that's just super common fact. Even going back to Betty and Barney Hill, one of the kind of proverbial famous cases in the U.S., I think 1961 in New Hampshire, Barney Hill afterwards very reluctantly admitted that sperm was basically extracted from him. And, it's this probably hard thing to process. You look at the free Edgar Mitchell studies on abduction. So, some of these larger databases, like a very high percentage involve this sort of, tissue sampling, gamete collection. So it almost points to us being, some sort of experiment, genetic experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. So personally, I don't have any recollection of anything sexual with any of my experiences, but that doesn't limit me from being compassionate towards other people who have.
Yeah. So when you say raped, you just mean your space was totally violated, and
a violation of any manipulation of your body without your consent, right? Arguably, that's of that nature. So there are a lot of folks that feel that way, but for me, in my experience, the terrifying one, it was I consider it a gift because it woke me up to the notion that this body is just a soul housing mechanism, right? It's a biological craft or vessel, right, with which you learn, right? And if you make some really stupid mistakes, like I did, and almost lost my leg, then it's a mechanism to learn through, right? And so it was very much a gift. But as a youngster, a combative commando, where I was all about, violence for justifiably for good reasons, right? We're gonna break in and rescue these folks, right? And if we have to take another human life, then so be it. That's a necessary evil for the as Spock would say, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, right? So the few bad folks, if we gotta whack them to get the good folks out, that's the way my mind works. So I believe that they had to penetrate my resistance on the same level. So they had to use violence to come after me, to wake me up to that whole notion. So overall, the experience is an enormously positive one. But when you're young, you don't realize that, right? It's kind of like as a parent, you got to watch your kid fail, like they're gonna touch that hot stove. You've told them 100 times. All right, let her do it. See what happens. Okay, sweetie, I told you, right? And that's just part of the process sometimes. So that's the way I felt about it.
So, John, you had your own alien experience.
Yeah, I think, and I can put that into the knowledge side versus the belief side. So I talk about, how I don't remember being born. So all I can do is believe that I was born in Idaho Falls in 1959, because I don't have a memory of that, right? But I do remember walking all those punishment hours at West Point, right? So I know that I got in a lot of trouble at Whoops, which is my favorite nickname for that place because it's something I said almost every day, my plebe year, right? Oops, screwed up again, right? And so the two memories that I cannot dismiss as dreams or sleep paralysis, and we can get into that, the science behind that, are a missing time mountain bike ride and a terror-filled night, after which I woke up with bruises. And so the mountain bike ride essentially was at least 5 hours of missing time, if not more. And so I'd gone for a ride on my mountain bike, and on the way back, it wasn't a very physically demanding ride. It was in 1995. It was right after the Oklahoma City bombing. And I was in this mode of, riding up into nature and meditating to try to kind of come to grips with some of the traumatic stuff I saw there. A young lady had to get her leg amputated just to get her out of the rubble. A lot of other stuff. I tell a story about when I first came into the Murrah building through the back, which was still intact. There was a parking garage back there. And I came upon this wheelbarrow, and right as I was, I'd already signed in. I was allowed to volunteer since I had TSSCI clearances. And because it was a crime scene, they were really keeping all the volunteers away unless you had a secret clearance because it was a crime scene, right? And so they had trusted that. So anyway, so I was all excited and ready to start helping out. And so I walked up to this wheelbarrow, and I heard this voice from behind me from the entrance, scream, "Stop!" And so I froze in my tracks right as I was about to grab it. And because I thought the wheelbarrow must be being used to get rid of the debris, and somebody had just filled it up and hadn't gotten over there. And then I realized that there was a stench, and it took a little bit to get through my mask. and it was a smell of rotting flesh. It was horrible. And then I happened to glance up, and there was this beautiful purple chiffon material that it took me a few seconds to realize that was a human body. And she had been blown up into the rebar steel reinforced concrete. And the reason the wheelbarrow was there was to collect her entrails. So there was a lot of human tissue and a pool of blood. And so that's why the voice didn't want me to move that. So that stuck with me over the years, or over the, yeah. So when I got back, so I was dealing with stuff like that.